You're listening to Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Overdoing It, where our team of library workers dish about their latest reads, views, and passions, alongside fascinating conversations with local luminaries. I'm your host, Dave Bartos, Coordinator of Adult Services at Cranston Public Library, and my pronouns are he, him. Let's dive in and discover who our guests are today.
I'm Liz Gotauco. I'm a local children's librarian and a debut author, and my pronouns are she, her.
I am Jade Gotauco. I am an artist, scrimshander, and sister to Liz Gotauco.
Thank you so much for joining. A little bit later in the show, we will talk to Liz and Jade about their book, F***ed Up Fairy Tales. But before we get to that, let's start out as we always do with, what have you been reading?
All right, I'll get into this. All right. So, of course, I just got to talk to Adam Gidwitz on his podcast, so I've been catching up with his books that I missed when I was like a teen librarian. And so I'm reading The Inquisitor's Tale, which is the one that he got the Newbery Honor for. And surprise, it's really good, as Newbery Honor books tend to be. It's about 3 kids in medieval France who each have these like abilities of some sort. Jean sees like visions of the future, and William has super strength, and Jacob can heal people. And they're all from different walks of life. Jean is a peasant girl, and William is a young monk who is the illegitimate son of like a lord and a black woman from North Africa. And Jacob is Jewish, which is not a ideal thing to be in medieval France. So, and of course, people who can seemingly perform miracles at this time, people usually want to kill them. So these kids end up on the run and in the middle of a heist to save all the Talmuds in France from being burned. And it's just a magical book with so many things to enjoy about it. It's written in the style of Chaucer or like the Decameron, where there's like a frame story. The narrator is this man who's really interested in the kids for some reason that we don't know yet. And so he's in a tavern and learning everything he can from each of the people in the tavern. So it's like the innkeeper's tale and this person's tale. And yeah, it's really good.
Cool. Is that man Charles Xavier by any chance? We have kind of like a medieval X-Men going on here.
It is. It's medieval X-Men for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But they're like saints instead of superheroes. Oh, and also there's a dog who is a saint, literally, because the dog died because she tried to save Jean, and the family like venerated her so much that she has come back to life, and she is a saint dog.
Oh, wow.
And she's a very good girl.
Oh, as all dogs are.
That's the best part of the story. Right there.
Yeah. The dog comes back to life. I love it.
Oh, beautiful. So I haven't had as much time as I would like to do reading, but I have spent some time with Bill Bryson's Road to Little Dribbling this summer, which has really been enjoyable. Bill Bryson has a great, like, subtle humor and commentary on the mundane. So most of his books are just enjoyable, soft reads where you can find humor in otherwise kind of boring situations. And I first got caught into him with A Walk in the Woods, which I would reread 1,000 times if I could. But A Road to Little Dribbling is, I won't go into a summation of it because I haven't completed the book, but it's just him going back to try to find his roots and enjoying the people of these miscellaneous small villages in England, and connecting to his past, and also being witness to the evolution of the area that he was familiar with when he was growing up.
That's fantastic. Summer's a perfect time for like a travel type book too. You know?
Yeah. A nice little easy bop with Bill Bryson.
I love
really
that.
Great.
That's awesome. I love talking about books when I'm on the show because I too don't read nearly as often as one would think a librarian does. I'm about a quarter of the way through a book called When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. And it's basically in a world quite like ours in the 1950s, 200,000 women turned into dragons. And then most of them sought revenge against the men who wronged them and then flew away to live in the mountains, which sounds pretty dope.
Can you do that?
Yeah, right? Is that a thing? Is that a thing that happens?
That would be nice.
And it's very much like, allegory sort of tale, and the aunt who left and the child who's left behind. I'm about a quarter of the way into it, but it's really believable. And there's in betweens the chapters, there's like, oh, there was this congressional hearing and this person trying to talk about dragons, and there was this academic paper and like a segment of the academic paper or this little clip from a newspaper that is all, they're kind of like trying to hush the news of this thing, which again, it's like, it's a world much like ours. And so it's not hard to imagine, well, we're not trying to talk about that bad thing that just happened. Just move on with our lives. It's fine. There was no reason for it.
That's awesome. There's a couple good like companion books to that. If you get in like into the women or dragons thing, there's like Seraphina by Rachel Hartman and Damsel by Alana K. Arnold. I'd say would be great. Excellent. If you want to totally geek out.
just keep dragoning. Yeah, definitely. Excellent. All right. So besides reading, have either of you watched anything lately? Oh yeah, I'm a TV fiend. That's my bad librarian thing. I'm like, I don't know, is there a TV show of this book that'll save me a lot of time? I'm actually just doing a lot of rewatching right now. Dan and I are rewatching Lost, because I think we're two of the few people that actually enjoyed how it ended, so we're enjoying the journey together. I'm rewatching the first season of A Man on the Inside because the new season's coming out, and that is just a really good feel-good show if anyone's looking for something to warm their heart. Ted Danson being a mole in a retirement home. Yes. Okay.
Trying to figure out who stole this necklace from one of the residents there. It's so good. I'm also watching Platonic on Apple, is one of my like current shows. Very funny show about a man and a woman and their toxic friendship, with Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne. And yeah. Oh, and then Bake Off. Bake Off just started again. Thank goodness. Yeah.
I have not been watching much. I am excited that there is a new season of the Great British Bake Off that's coming out. So Steve and I watch that every Friday night. They put a new episode on, and that's like our feel-good, wholesome kind of relief from the rest of the media that we tend to take in on the daily.
One of my like favorite elements of that show is like the drawings of the bakes that they do when they introduce it.
Yeah, the little illustrations.
I don't know. It's so charming, and I look forward to that every episode.
Yeah, it's such a great show. And, compared to like the American versions of cooking competitions, everybody's just so nice in that show. Everybody's working together, and the tone is nice and relaxing, even though, they're under pressure. But the way that they work together, the camaraderie is refreshing.
Yes.
And it's food. It all looks tasty. So
right. You can compete and also get along. I think that's the kind of putting the lie to like, oh no, we have to be cutthroat. It's like, we don't have to be cutthroat.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing to be reminded of that.
Yeah, it reminds me of a stand-up comedian. It almost feels like an aside, but a stand-up comedian, Josh Gondelman, who's so obviously the nicest person you could ever work with, and also funny as hell, and also makes things funnier with other people. And so it's like, you can make good art and also not be a jerk. Like, you can actually do it. And so let's do that. Let's not be jerks, guys.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think so.
Yeah.
How about you, Dave? What are you watching?
I have not been watching much of anything. No,
you're in a media void.
I'm in a media void. I've been reading, and then I've been falling asleep. And that's been pretty good.
Great.
That's really good.
I have no complaints at all. Actually, falling asleep is delightful. Snuggle a cat, go to bed. It's perfect.
Put your TV down, folks. Put your TV down. Put your TV down. Pick up a book and a cat.
Why have you been holding your TV? That's
that's not why you watch TV.
Yeah.
No wonder you're so stressed.
You're holding this TV. As a podcast maker, I am also a podcast listener, if there's anything good I've been listening to lately. I mean, talking about nice people who are nice, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to that you've been on recently, Liz, is You Are Good, the Feeling podcast about movies.
It's a great podcast. Yeah, I just listened to Liz's episode, and it's amazing. Yeah,
it is.
Really good.
It is. You couldn't have name dropped anything more like, oh my God, I can't believe you're going to be on this, than that. I've been listening for a while.
I couldn't believe it.
Right?
Especially because I think I just reached out to Alex when I watched Charlotte's Web, and I was like, this is a movie that makes me feel things, man. If you ever want to talk to a librarian. And then he was like, I assure you, I would like to do this. Sometimes it takes us a million years to book people. And sure enough, it was like a month before we recorded. He was like, all right, let's do this. What time? When? And I was like, it's happening.
Right.
But yeah, that's a great show of just like, if you just want, again, something to warm your heart.
Definitely.
Even when they're talking about, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
There's joy in that conversation.
Right. And the way they talk about, they're not movie critics. He says this at the top of every show. They're just looking at movies and what they make us feel as people. And so I too am going to be like, well, if you want to talk to more librarians,
more librarians in the podcast sphere.
Right. So that's always a fun show to just sort of forget about things by listening. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes my sister and I, we keep a list of like, ooh, we should watch these movies based on these conversations that we haven't caught up on. And, do they hold up or not? Wayne's World really holds up.
Nice.
You wouldn't necessarily think that it would, but I think the best 90s comedy, as far as like, you could still watch it. And there's really nothing kind of like when you think of 90s comedy problematic that you have to worry about.
That's a miracle.
It really is. It really is. All the ones based in Chicago, basically. If it's based in Chicago, it probably held up
That's
okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. Blues Brothers, Adventures in Babysitting, Ferris Bueller was pretty just
really
kids being kids.
I'm actually surprised that one holds up.
It's not too bad.
The vibes do not. It would imply that otherwise, but I'm so glad. That's good.
Yeah. So watch a comedy set in Chicago. You'll be fine. Well, I want us to have enough time to introduce our listeners to you both and your book, Fucked Up Fairy Tales, which is available in all the best libraries and indie bookstores near you. So Liz, why don't you maybe give us a brief overview of how you got to here writing this book?
Absolutely. It all started in my bedroom on TikTok randomly when I saw it was National Tell a Fairy Tale Day. I saw that on my little like desk pad calendar at work. And I was like, oh, I'm going to tell my favorite fairy tale because it always makes people go, what? And so I did. I just held my phone up. I was like, here's this crazy fairy tale I know. And I told the fairy tale about the princess whose dad falls in love with her and how she escapes from that situation with 3 magical gowns and a cloak made of all the animals in the forest. Mm-hmm. Don't think about that too hard. That's sad. And yeah, and it like, I didn't go like super viral in that first moment, but I started building an audience there, and people were like, oh, do you know this one? Oh, I'd love to hear you tell this fairy tale. So then I became the Fucked Up Fairy Tales lady on TikTok. And a few years into it, I befriended another folklorist named Pete Geordie Wood, who wrote a really fantastic collection called Tales Beyond the Rainbow, which is all queer fairy tales. And I had wanted to feature his book on my channel. And through that, we became friends. And at one point he said, so when are you going to write a fairy tale book? And I was like, ha ha, I'm not. And he was like, no, I really think you should do it now. His main point was like, because if you don't, some man is going to be like, that's a good idea for a book. And then he's going to write it. And then you're not going to have the credit. So I was like, well, that's a very compelling argument. So he began coaching me through the process of creating a proposal and pitching the book.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for being my cheerleader. Yeah, and I was very lucky to find an agent relatively quickly and to get a book deal within the year, which is really exciting.
Yeah. We've been talking on all the various text chains about how fun it is to watch everyone gush about you.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And when you approached getting serious about writing the book, how did you approach your work that you had already done and find what kind of translated well into a book? Or did you kind of take a fresh look at everything at that point?
For the sake of time, I did rely on a lot of material I'd already covered, partly because I knew that there were certain fairy tales that resonated with people kind of based on how those videos did. So it would have been insane for me not to include one of the versions of Allerleirauh, the very first fairy tale I told on TikTok that got me this audience. And I also, my agent Ronald, who was kind of my next cheerleader in this process, he was really like, nothing in this proposal is set in stone. It's mostly about getting the main idea out there. There are things you can tweak later. So when I began planning what the book might look like, I did use a lot of fairy tales that I'd already done videos based on, because as Ronald would remind me, this is a new format, and Pete too would say the same thing. He's like, it doesn't really matter if you've already told the story before, this is a new way. And it was also kind of a way of documenting this like strange time in my life where I told fairy tales online. So when I added new stuff, of course it was for fun. And because I know my followers would like to have some like exclusive fairy tales to the book. But it was also about filling in the gaps of the types of tales that I hadn't explored yet.
Yeah, and what I love about it is how all around the world it is. It's not just the fairy tales that one thinks of when one thinks of fairy tales, and it feels very medieval European, right?
Sure.
And but that you also are very clear with, like, every culture has a Cinderella, every culture has a Snow White. Like, these are all things that just exist in our almost like collective unconscious. Can you talk a little bit about the curation process as you were putting it together, like how you chose this or that story? Yeah,
absolutely. I knew I wanted it to be a diverse collection, and like storytellers are in a weird position, especially storytellers who look as white as I do. And I happen to be of Filipino descent as well, but you would never guess it. And I've lived the life of a white lady, very privileged. And so it's like, I can write what is closest to my cultural context, and we can have yet another collection of European fairy tales that frankly everyone kind of knows, or I can use my platform to like elevate some other people's stories. And one of my favorite aspects of fairy tales is how much smaller it makes our big world. And obviously, I don't have to tell anyone we live in a really divisive era right now. And anything that can remind people that there are these like seeds of humanity that connect us. And one of those seeds is like a glass slipper or whatever version of that you find around the world. I think that's really important and a really fascinating, magical part about fairy tales. So the way I approached it was I wanted to get some representation from every part of the globe that I possibly could. And that didn't totally work out. Because there is a hole. I don't have any indigenous American stories. Well, I do have some like indigenous Latin American stories, but I don't have any like Native American stories in there yet. And that's just because the process of presenting those tales in a respectful way is a lot more complicated. It's generally seen as good practice to get permission or like a blessing from the tribal nation whose tale you want to share.
Sure.
And that was very hard to do. And I loved all the people I met along the way. It just didn't work out this time around. So yeah, it was a little bit of like a puzzle. I was trying to plan like the why of this book. Why am I writing this book besides the fact that I'm on TikTok and I'm going to write a book now? And what were the themes that I would explore in it? And then what are the tales that fit these themes? And along the way, when I would find a hole, I would do my best to say, can I fill this with a fairy tale that's not from Europe? And it just meant like diving into a lot of different sources that I had, of trying to do a little bit of like family tree fairy tale hunting, where I would see, well, I don't have like a Snow White here, so what kind of Snow Whites are there, or that type of thing. And then also just trying to find stuff. I didn't want to do all fairy tales that were based on familiar ones you already know. I wanted to throw in some obscure stuff and things that would be really new to really show the range of what these folk tales, the structure of them and what they cover. Phew.
Phew.
Did I miss anything?
Actually, a lot of thought goes into doing these things, right?
It is. So when you write a book, you have to put a lot of work into it.
Yes. And I really am impressed by the tone. It's almost like, it makes me, again, as a 90s kid, think of like Mystery Science Theater 3000. Like, you're riffing on things that are happening and these like clever asides, just like in the videos that you've done, but that it's also like so well researched that it really is a standalone survey of folk tales around the world. And in doing that, you also kind of make them your own, which is also doing folk tales. You tell a story and you make the story a little bit your own story and put your own spin on it. And that's just continuing the tradition. And the introduction is basically a like academic treatise on the concept of folktale. I really enjoyed that too. Again, it's a lot of thought goes into doing these things, and it's impressive to see it in existence. I love it.
Oh, thanks. One of the concerns I have when I do videos, as well as when I put the book together, that like when I share a folktale and I call it fucked up, I don't want people to think it's because I'm judging this culture or
right.
the people whose tale this is. I like authentically love the fucked upness, and wow, I'm putting in a lot of F-bombs for you to have to clear. Sorry. I genuinely like seeing how people from all over the world work out their neuroses through fairy tales. And so I think one of the ways to make that love clear, and also make it so people know that this isn't like a frivolous thing to just be like, look at all these weird ass fairy tales. It's like an important part of our development as people. And there's a lot of study put into this aspect of folklore. Folklore is a social science, and it's part of anthropology. So, I'm basically digging into the librarian side of me,
right.
And not just the TikToker side of me, kind of helped ground the stories, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And each story ends with, well, this is the source. This is where this came from. And if you want to read more, read these things. I mean, it's a great place to start and then continue as a reader.
Absolutely. Don't read my fairy tales and then be like, now I'm done. Now I know them all.
I know all the fairy tales. Boy, they have a lot of F-bombs in them.
Yeah, you might not. That's a little bit of a Liz Gotauco spice. I was just rereading. I don't know if I did it consciously, but I was just rereading Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And that's what Schwartz does in those books. He doesn't do it quite in the text like I do, but like you flip to the back, he's got all his sources, and then he's got like further reading, and then he would star books, because that was a book for children, of course, that he would say, I think children in particular would like these books. So I think when like we write these folklore books, we're always hoping that they're for the young adult who's going to be like, wow, now I want to be a folklorist, and who's going to continue the tradition.
Right. That's awesome. So I was talking before we started recording. I just got back from visiting my sibling in the middle of the country. And we have a really fun dynamic. My sibling, Michelle, often says that, I'm the smart one and then they're the talented one when introducing me to people. And then I always quip that, I think you meant them smart ass, because that is our dynamic. So Jade, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the sibling collaboration. What was it like working with your older sibling, one? And no, I don't have an and. What was it like? what was that like? How much did Liz have to kind of like twist your arm to make you do this?
Well, zero.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer for me. And I think what's especially cool about it too, that Liz and I, when we were younger, we didn't really vibe all that great. We're really just different on a lot of levels. Mm-hmm. But the timing of the book and Liz asking me to do the illustrations, I think was really perfect, because as we've gotten older, we've gotten closer. Yeah. And I think this was a really cool way to kind of come together using everything that we've learned and curated in our own individual lives, and put it into something tangible. So I had no idea what the expectations were or anything. She asked me if I would illustrate it, and I was like, yes, obviously. What do you want?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And for you, Liz, how difficult was it to get publishers to say, oh, this is the person I want to illustrate my book? Because I know sometimes that's assigned, right?
I thought that would be the situation when my editor, Tom, and I were like fleshing out what the book would be. He asked about illustrations. I said, I think there should be, it would be lovely to have at least some like small like chapter headers or something. Mm-hmm. And I expected them to be like, okay, here's a list of people we work with. Who do you want? But partly because, I don't know if people know this, but I funded the illustrations from my advance. So maybe that's why I got the freedom to say, this is my illustrator, because it was my money. And they totally put it to me. I mean, I'm sure if I brought them someone that was like bad, they would have been like,
Right.
Well, who else you got? But not only, of course, is Jade immensely talented, but my editor loved the idea of the two of us working on it together, and especially because Jade's background is in scrimshaw, which is sort of a folk art, and also like another like folklore, something that like people kind of think of in an antiquated way, but Jade is doing it in a really modern way. It felt like a really good fit for this, and if I get to give my money to an artist, it's going to be an artist I love, who I want more people to see their stuff. And I happen to have one right in the family.
Oh. Well, thank you, sister.
And Jade, the illustrations, they're so evocative, and I think in keeping with the upness of the collection that, in again, as Liz was saying earlier, like the best way possible. Like they are moody and set the tone, and the way that they come at the beginning, and it's like, okay, how is that going to come into the I mean, I love them.
Sorry, I know you're talking to Jade, and now I'm jumping in.
No,
It's okay.
jump in to say nice things about Jade.
That's true. The format of the book wasn't originally the plan either.
Okay.
Like I said, I kind of brought Jade in to be like, oh, and she can do a little like cute decorative whatever around like the title of the book or whatever. And then she gave me this like beautiful like full page portrait for Donkey Skin was the first one we did.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is so good. But are they going to let me do like a full page illustration? And it turns out, yes. As long as it was black and white, it wasn't too much of a big deal to like adjust how much of the artwork we'd see in the book. And so then it really became like more like an Andrew Lang type of fairy tale book, like in an old school way, where every fairy tale begins with a full page illustration. And I love how that honors like the fairy tale books of old, while obviously still having Jade's like modern sensibility tied to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the illustration for the finger, that was, I'd have to say, I mean, that was a terrifying story. And I think that everyone took it so chill. They're like, okay, well, obviously we need to go talk to how many rabbis about this. Like, that's what I would do too.
Yeah.
And a lot of Jewish folklore, the finger is a great Jewish tale about a man that accidentally marries a zombie lady. And that's like the vibe in most of these tales is like something in like a supernatural Jewish folktale. Something crazy happens and people are mostly scared, but the rabbi is always like, all right, we can figure this out. They approach it in a very scholarly, comfy way. Yeah. And I loved writing that, and I love reading it. That there's a great collection of Jewish folklore called Lilith's Cave by Howard Schwartz that has all sorts of similar stories. And and it's always just like a little bit of scholarship, a little bit of faith, and a little bit of community that solves the issue. Isn't that lovely?
It is. Absolutely. And, you get to have your corpse bride and your non-corpse bride and all of the things.
And then Jade's illustration for our listeners is a skeletal hand flipping the bird to the viewer with a wedding ring on it. And which I think is fun. I just love because I think the corpse bride in that story is sassy.
Yes.
She won't take nothing.
She does not. So Jade, can you talk a little bit about kind of your approach to creating the illustrations?
Yeah. So I was reading them like as Liz was writing them, which was really fun. So there was a lot of like development going on. And it was kind of funny. Like usually I am a little more reserved in nature. And Liz is a lot more vocal and funny and all of those things. But what I found really interesting with Liz and I is that my initial ideas were almost too fucked up for Liz. Like there were some things where I was like, what if we did this? And she was like, ooh, like, I don't know if that's too much for us. But basically like the goal was to harness a concept in each story without giving away the story in the illustration. So kind of hint at what we were going into rather than giving away something, really specific or explicit. Mm-hmm. So Liz would like give me, one sentence of like maybe this and this, and then I would just play with that and kind of add in cultural elements along the way. Like when we figured out that we could do the full page illustrations, I really tried to find cultural references to wherever the stories came from. So like if you see flowers or something in the illustration, then that's going to be from the origin of the story. Small symbolic little breadcrumbs into these illustrations, but putting the focus on giving the reader a hint at what they were getting into.
Yeah, there were a couple times where Jade gave me some illustrations and I would be like, I don't know if I get this. One was, I was thinking of Bob Cked, which is an Indian Cinderella that we share, which opens with a little girl being birthed from a man's thumb. And so Jade had given me this illustration of this man's hand with a blister coming from it. And she made like a little face on the blister. I was like, I don't know if I get this. Do I like this? Let's take the face away. Over the journey of making the story, one of the things that I struggled with that my editor would point out was when I was doing the multicultural stories, I was a little more hesitant. I wasn't as like gregarious with my tone as I have been in other stories. And it's because I was like trying to be respectful, and that was in some ways getting in the way of my voice. So then when I was trying to now bring a little bit more of me into it and find more of the humor and stuff, I like came back to that original illustration. I was like, no, let's go with this because I think that's going to like help the vibe as well. So sometimes like Jade helped me get my preconceived notions out of the way as well. And we would do some back and forth. And it was always fun though.
Yeah, it was always fun. It was always fun.
I love this. And then there's also these, like marginalia illustrations that are kind of peppered throughout, and it's always fun to see like I can't get the image of the sassy donkey. That's just sort of it's just sort of like over it.
I love it.
The Jim Halpert donkey.
Yes. Yes. Looking right at the camera, just spiking the can.
Yeah, that was actually a funny one where Jade sent me the initial illustration. I was like, oh, that's not actually how I pictured the donkey's face. So I sent her some pictures of Jim Halpert, and she was like, well, I was going off these pictures of Jim Halpert, and I was like, oh no, you're right. You got the Halpert. I didn't.
Stepping back from the book, Jade, you mentioned at the top you're a scrimshander. We've already said scrimshaw a couple of times. If there's anyone listening who's unaware of what that is, how do you describe it?
Yes. So scrimshaw is, I'll start with like the cliff notes of what you might read in like a history book of scrimshaw. So scrimshaw is known as, and I'm going to put quotations around this, the only original American art form. It's kind of a weird way to frame it. But in early America and the height of the whaling industry, whalers aboard the ships would utilize the byproduct of whales. So bone, their teeth, ivory, baleen from humpback whales and right whales. They would utilize these materials to craft miscellaneous things. So they would either carve or engrave designs onto the whale teeth themselves, or they would fashion fids or rope splitters, more functional tools, needles to repair their sails. All of those things that were created aboard the whale ship by the whalers from the byproduct of the whale, that is all considered scrimshaw. Liz and I come from a family, our dad's maternal side, our Fifield family migrated from England to Newfoundland during the mid-1700s and were a part of the fishery. So when our grandmother came down to Boston from Newfoundland, she brought all of this byproduct, all this ivory and bone, down to Boston, and eventually gave that to our father, who was a scrimshaw artist in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So we grew up in this business. This is, a long line of us. And I recently started to pick it up professionally. Well, in the last 10 years, I've been focusing my vision onto the scrimshaw and loving it. In a different way, Liz is focused on the literature, but the scrimshaw and the historical folk art nature of it is also, very tied into this. And just kind of harnessing our ancestry and understanding where we come from, how did we get here?
Right.
And scrimshaw is an interesting thing to do because there are very few scrimshanders in existence today that are actually working on the byproducts that are of proper age to be considered legal and welcome in the art world.
Right.
Yeah, basically in the 70s, to clap down on poaching and stuff, there were some laws put into the how scrimshaw can be handled, how it can be bought or not, and cannot be bought and sold essentially now. So the only materials that scrimshanders have to work with is anything that was obtained before that ban.
Right. You need documentation.
So it's a finite resource, and which is great because we love animals. We don't want to hurt them for art.
It's a weird thing too. One of the heavier aspects of doing this for me is the responsibility that comes with that, because we have a limited resource of this. If I go into it as I just want to make profit and capitalize off of this, number one, I'm doing a disservice, as far as the ethics are concerned. I'm just continuing the debauchery that was the whaling industry. So, looking at it as, I'm stewarding this art on its way out the door. There will be riffs off of scrimshaw. Like, people will continue to carve cow bone and fossil ivory and all that stuff, but the whaling material itself is finite, and kind of watching it go is a weird career choice.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's kind of it's really inspiring on a historical and energetic level, working with these materials.
Yeah.
And trying to make something worthwhile from them.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I mean, honestly, hearing about that makes you even more so the ideal illustrator for the book, because it's basically the art version of folktale in terms of bringing that sensibility to it, and that respect, but also irreverence, like a respectful irreverence as far as the illustrations go. I don't want to speak of your scrimshaw there, but to match the tone of the book.
Yeah, I think like both like scrimshaw and folktales are like aspects of folklore that have been sort of not gate kept, but maybe a little gate kept by men of a certain type. And so it's interesting to be two women working in that world, and it's also both of them have a lot of aspects that haven't aged well, and to trying to bring a modern sensibility to that and figure out how we can love it in a world that's very different now. That's something both Jade and I work with.
Yeah. Scrimshaw also is, it is a male dominated field, and there are, I say there are a few scrimshanders, but there are even fewer women in the field. And, it's a little awkward. It's a lot fun. It's an honor to be in the position, but it's also a very active mission to kind of reframe that. Because, one of the things, historically speaking, that would justify the perspective of, women never make scrimshaw because women weren't whalers. That's really only because women weren't very well documented aboard the whaling ships. They were actually on the whaling ships, and they were creating scrimshaw. They just were not spoken of.
Yes.
So challenging those old ideals, being a younger woman coming into the field, has been interesting. It's unfortunate that a lot of these old ideas still exist. They're alive and well. But it's, it's an honor.
Yeah, definitely. It was suggested I ask you about your start in scrimshaw and the first piece that you made.
Yeah. I don't remember the very first piece I made, but
the first iconic piece you made.
Okay. All right. I think I know which one we speak of. So I used to spend a lot of my summers in my dad's workshop, and I have always loved art. So, give me a pen and paper or crayons or paint or whatever, I'm all in. And my dad would set me up in the back or at his desk with a bunch of blank pieces of ivory and a scribe, like very young. I probably picked up my first scribe when I was like 6. A little dangerous. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it was a good idea.
Sharp objects,
but
small
I
children.
had a lot of fun. So I would do a lot of like funny, silly things. Like I have this whole collection of the Man in the Moon with the sun. Like it was very 90s.
Lots of celestial art.
lots of celestial art.
New Age.
Then like you can see like in my little collection different phases that I was going through. And I think the most iconic piece was I spent this one particular summer under my dad's mentorship, and he was really encouraging me to perfect a dolphin. And I've never really been much of a fan of dolphins, honestly.
You weren't a dolphin girl.
I was not a dolphin girl, so it was a weird thing to choose. And I call it the summer of dolphins because I did so many dolphins. And one of them, like just picturing it cracks me up. One of them has this kind of like ratchet dolphin on it. And I had scribed into the piece, "This stinks."
Yeah, so it's like this little dolphin illustration, and under it says, "This stinks."
This stinks. And like the ink wasn't even fully on it. It was like I just gave up on this thing and sent it away, and my dad kept it.
Yeah, he kept it. We still have it.
Yeah. So when I was like gathering materials and putting my focus more into the scrimshaw, I found that, and I mean, it's legendary. I really should put it on a proper pendant, just exactly as it is, with half inked. And,
yeah, the frustration of the child artist is all right in it.
Oh, so real.
If people don't know totally how it works, you have your piece of ivory. You put like a swab of black ink on it, and then a scribe is basically like, it's not like an X-Acto knife, but it's similar.
Like a needle point.
And then you're like etching a drawing in the negative into this like ink space. Then when you're done, you put another batch of ink over it that settles into the engraving you've made, and you buff like the excess away, and you have the engraving left. So I mean, you are carving a drawing. It's not just drawing. You're like carving a drawing, and it's it's not. I mean, I'm making it sound like you're like carving into a rock face. It's not like that. But it is a new way. It's a different way of learning how to draw, especially when you've grown up with the smoothness of waxy crayons. Now you're like chiseling a dolphin into a piece of bone for the 500th time, probably. And Dad did try to teach us both. We both got to indulge, but I very quickly abandoned it to go put on all of the jewelry that he had in the shop, because we were shop kids every summer. So I had more sparkly things to do.
Yeah, I saw it as a real challenge. And I think, now that I understand like the way my brain works a little bit more, I tend to gravitate towards things that people say is too hard or it can't be done. And like scrimshaw is one of those things that just seems absurd. So, like sometimes you're working on like really, really tiny pieces and you can do these incredible designs, like whole scenes on like the tip of your pinky nail.
Yeah.
And I resonate with that. Like make it harder, and I'm going to want to do it even more.
Jade's being really modest about this, but she's actually one of those people that picks things up really fast, and it's super annoying.
It's only because I obsess about it. It's an issue sometimes.
I was a costume design major in college, and it took me like 3 years before I was like comfortable at a sewing machine. And one day Jade called me. She was like, I made my first sewing project. And she was like, being like, yay, I'm looking up to you, Liz, who sews. And I was like, wow, that's great. What did you make? Most people make a pillowcase or a tote bag, a rectangle, basically. And Jade said, I made a pair of pants. And I was like, what the F? That's really hard. Like, pants are hard. There's like a weird math that goes into it. And so, and I think our dad actually both of our parents are very talented and quick to pick up new passions.
They are extraordinary. Yeah.
Our dad started golfing when he was like 60, and then by like the next year he was winning every tournament. Like,
wow.
I don't know. There's something weird in the brains in our family.
We focus really well. Like, I mean, I think that's what it is. It's like we catch a vibe, and it's like everything else just fades away, and that needs to be followed. So, we're definitely a multi-talented group.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And now, this multi-talented coming together into something everyone can hold in their hands. It's just it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
love this. Is there anything else about the book or the process or scrimshaw that we haven't brought up that you want to make sure people come away from this knowing or wanting to know more about?
One of the things I love about Jade's work, and it's something that like I feel like I mirror in my folklore work, is like the stories that she chooses to tell with the scrimshaw, because like fairy tales, there's a certain type of fairy tale that we're all very familiar with, and that's really easy to share and share again. And with scrimshaw, you'll see a lot of like, I guess like New England Americana type stuff. You'll a lot of tall, ships and seals and shells and beachy stuff that, a tourist going to Nantucket is going to want to buy or whatever. But Jade's been doing some really unique like portraiture, and, she's done some like ship art, but the ships she's chosen, she's highlighted like a slave ship that came down and like talked about the history and how kind of those things intersect with whaling. And American slavery. And I just think that that's a cool development that definitely factored into the book as well.
Yeah, I think we both aim to put a light onto things that are otherwise kind of put in a dark. it is a really similar process that we go through, just like really different mediums. I like to give women throughout history some airtime. People that were really significant contributors throughout, little pockets of history. I do like to focus on the local because it is natural for us as New England kids, to tell stories that might otherwise be missed.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we wrap up the show with a segment called The Last Chapter, where we'll just talk about a library or bookish related question. And I think this fits into the conversation we've been having. So today I wanted to ask you, is there a book that you loved as a child that you've revisited and found it did not withstand the test of time?
Oh, yeah, I did. Well, I was super into King Arthur growing up. My two favorite children's books are The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper and The Winter Prince by Elizabeth E. Ween, actually, I think is how you say her name. And so a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm going to reread The Once and Future King. And I started it. And in the first 75 pages, that man dropped the N-word in Arthurian England. And I was like, what? Also,
Wow.
It's super sexist. It's so sexist. And so I returned it to the library immediately. And I said, I don't need this. So you should be aware of that, folks. The Sword and the Stone is out there in your, I mean, the Sword and the Stone is the kid book too.
Yeah.
Is the Once Future King is 4 books in one, and Sword and Stone's the first one. Stick to the Disney movie. Don't pick up that book. It's nuts. It's insane in a bad way. Yeah. Ages very, very, very badly. But you know what doesn't age badly is The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. That is a fantastic book, and I read it every few years.
Wow. I can honestly say that I have not reread anything from my childhood, but to be totally fair, the books I was reading when I was younger, I wasn't really reading the fairy tales. I liked Stephen King. Yeah. That was my thing. And Stephen King holds up. From what I have gathered, I think most of Stephen King's stuff holds up. I don't think there's anything too risque.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've revisited stuff and I've just been like, wow, this is boring. Like it hasn't been like a disaster. Like I reread some like Babysitter's Club books and I was like, yeah, these were for 12-year-old me.
Yeah.
And they're not for 40 whatever year old me. And that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that comes to mind for me is Isaac Asimov. I don't think I've reread much Isaac Asimov, but to your point, when it comes to folktale, when it comes to Scrimshaw, when it comes to science fiction, right? Like a very specific male-centric look at the concept of science fiction. And like, I would rather go read Anne Leckie or Martha Wells or Annalee Newitz. And that's the kind of science fiction I'm really interested in now. And, I'll appreciate Isaac Asimov for getting me on that road.
Definitely.
But I don't feel the need to reread him anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, the more you like open up your world to like the diversity in it, you don't realize like how small the world is until you get into the larger part of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you have to throw away, except for the Sword and the Stone.
So
throw away the Sword and the
Stone.
But you have to throw away these old like sci-fi masters or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, they, we keep lifting them up and I'm like, there's so many people we need to lift.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So as we get ready to close out the recording, want to give you an opportunity to promote your work, where people can find you online, see more of your great stuff.
Yeah, people can follow me online almost wherever you are online at Cosbrarian, which is COSBRARIAN, Cosbrarian. And you can find our book, Fucked Up Fairy Tales, wherever you get books, truly, wherever you get them, you can find it. And I, of course, appreciate you buying it from your indie bookseller or asking your library to purchase a copy. But whatever is easiest for you, please get it.
Yeah.
We'd love that.
How about you, Jade?
I feel like we need to just leave that on Liz's since we're promoting, but
no.
You can find me on Instagram. I am Gotauco Scrimshaw. It's Gotauco Scrimshaw. And that is strictly for the Scrimshaw. Sometimes I will share other things that I'm doing, like with Liz or other collaborations, but generally it's just for the scrimshaw itself.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out all of that stuff. And there'll be links in the show notes to check out your work.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you would like to tell us about a book from your childhood that didn't hold up, or you just want to reach out to the show, you can send us an email at overdoingitpod@gmail.com. And that's spelled overdue like all the library books in my house, ingitpod@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Instagram at overdoingitpod. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend and rate or review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to help us reach more Rhode Islanders. Overdoing It is proud to be a resident partner of the Rhode Island Center for the Book and is brought to you by library staff and community members all around the Ocean State. The project has been funded in part by the Rhode Island Office of Library and Information Services. Thank you again for listening. This has been another episode of Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. We're overdoing it, but you're doing just fine. Besides reading, have you been enjoying anything with your eyeballs that aren't words? I'm going to start that again.
I think it was pretty